YouTube. Hi guys, I'm back. I was thinking about what I wanted to do because Gage said we could post vlogs. So I was like, what kind of vlog would I want to post? And I decided that I would do a sort of play style vlog for you guys. If you're ever interested in wondering like what I build for my, supports and what I choose to do in lanes and everything like that. So this is going to be my vlog explaining, what I choose to do right now at the end of season 4, as we go into season 5 in the bot lane, especially like early, mid to late game. So generally for champions like Morgana and Nami, I go into Frost Queen claim, and for Frost Queen claim, I use that through mid game, and then depending on how the game's going, especially if I'm Nami, Gage said I switch it to Talisman. I sometimes don't do that just because I think the active on Frost Queen claim is really useful, especially for disengaging fights. If you're being chased down, and you were pushing objectives and you have to get out fast, Talisman and Frost Queen kind of offer the same types of situation changers. So I don't know, but that's my pick for poke champions like that, ones that you can get the extra damage down and the procs on, especially in early laning phase when zoning is really crucial for your ADC's farming ability. So for Morgana and Nami, and then I would say like Zillion and Sona and Zyra, those would definitely be good ones to use that on. For Relic Shield, I really only build it on Braum and Leona, just because they are the tankiest champions, especially in and Taric. But I don't get to play Taric a lot because my team hates it when I play Taric because I spam his joke every single time. I have his joke locked to A key, and I run around the map pressing it around every single person to the point where they all actually mute their sounds because they get pissed. But it's worth because gems are truly outrageous. But I only build Relic on those champions, just because they're the only champions that, I think really need it. Just because, mid to late game, they're not really trying to, do much but be tanks. Whereas other champions like Thresh and Blitzcrank, I'd build Talisman on because they're more of the engage and kind of peel for your team. I know Braum and Leona peel for your team too, but once you get to the mid to late game and your team has a lot of mobility and a lot of potential in team fights, Leona and Braum are definitely the type of champions that you just want to be in their face and take as much damage as you can. And then I think the active is really useful. Especially when trying to get out of fights and you're really low, you can shield yourself and run away, or if you're you have an ally that's trying to get out of the fight and they're really low, you can throw the shield on them, and it's decent a single target disengage, which I find extremely useful, especially for comps that we build around Braum and Leona. I don't really worry about having Talisman or Frost Queens. I just really want them to be as tanky as possible, especially early, because Jose and I are very dominant in lane, and we take a lot of lane control very early, so I think having that on my tanky people allows me to, do some level 2 or level 3 tower dives, which I wouldn't feel comfortable doing with, like, Morgana or Nami or something. So that would be why I would pick Relic, and then I do Talisman on, like what I said, like Blitzcrank and Thresh. Sometimes I think about starting lane with Coin on Nami, just for the extra mana regen, because I think it provides a little more, and then the extra gold, because it also provides a little more. And then I run some weird masteries for my supports, but that's just my own personal preference. I don't generally follow, like the pro stuff, just because I actually do have my own personal preference, but I won't get into that. And then for your continuing build, I always get Sightstone on my first back if I can afford it, and if I can, I build a component to it. I always focus on rushing an early Sightstone just because Jose and I do end up pushing lane a lot, and so I put wards down in the river, kind of past the bush a little bit, and then up to the entrance of blue, and then a little on the other side of Dragon Pit, so we have full vision. Jose is really good about warding our try as well, so that junglers can't get behind us. but he and I are very strong warders early game. We like keeping, bot side really control. I like to believe that I'm generally in charge of dragon control in the early game, so I always buy a pink and put it in the middle of the pit, just so that I can see any wards placed in the entire pit. So if anyone feels like being crafty and putting a ward in the back side of the pit and I have my pink in the front of the pit, it doesn't really work that way, whatever. And then after they clear my pink, because they always end up clearing it, I like putting it either on the backside of Baron or the backside of Dragon, just for the extra, control of that area of the map. I find those to be extremely crucial pick points. So I'll put pink wards there. And then, for items, it really depends on how the game's going. Generally on Leona, if, they have a stronger AD comp, or like their ADC, or if their jungler's AD, or if their mid lane's AD, and they're kind of going off, I'd rush into my, armor item first, so I'd get like a Sunfire after I get Mobies, because I always go Sightstone and then Mobies, just for super early map control, and I can always get it around 10 minutes, just because that's how Jose and I end up having lanes. So by 10 minutes, I'll generally have Sightstone and Mobies, and we'll be finishing my support item, or halfway through finishing my support item, and I will always switch to my sweeping trinket after I get Sightstone, so I can also get a lot of ward control that way too. And so that's my mentality for like the early game. And then mid game, it's based on who's snowballing the hardest on the enemy team and where I'm most needed in team fights. So if I'm trying to peel, I'm gonna go, like super defensive, and I'm not gonna really rush into finishing any items. I'm just gonna have enough to keep me like tanky enough for like the mid game team fights, and then I'll figure it out once we get starting into late game, like what I really need to focus on finishing. But a lot of times I kind of choose like the core items for like Leona and Braum. I'll go like, Spirit Visage, or like Sunfire, or like Randuin's, and it adds or sometimes even Frozen Heart if nobody on the team's building it, because it adds a lot of extra protection for myself. So when I'm trying to like, peel for the team and everything, that's what I do. And then for Nami and like Morgana, I'll start building like partially damaged items, just because by that time I may have actually have gotten a few kills, which I don't intend to do, but it just kind of happens that way. And I have a lot of assists, and so I think getting damage on me is sometimes really useful, especially for turning team fights around, because with the Nami ult or Morgana ult, it adds extra damage to team fights, and it can really turn the tides. No pun intended. So for like Nami mid game, I kind of always get a Chalice, just because I can build it into Crucible. And generally, the enemy team's always gonna have a decent amount of CC, and so I like getting the Crucible, but I don't generally rush into Crucible, because a lot of times it's not super crucial, especially, in the mid-game when people's stuns or slows aren't as long-lasting. So I'll get a Chalice for the mana regen, and then the magic resist, and then on Nami, I'll probably end up building her partially tanky, which kind of sounds weird, but, I'll start building like a Frozen Heart, or something along the lines of like a Locket or something, for like the extra tankiness, because a support that lasts longer in fights is more useful than a support that dies like right at the bat. So I try not to die a lot too. I focus on not dying, just because I think that if I die, I'm not super useful to the team. And if I'm not super useful to the team in team fights, then I don't feel like I'm doing my job. So I really focus on keeping myself alive, but more so in the sense that, like, alive long enough to keep everyone else alive, and then if I have to die, I have to die. Like, whatever. I don't honestly care. I call myself the sacrificial lamb of the team. But it may not look that way in the stats, but most of my deaths are me trying to bait people away from my carries. So, especially Jose, because that's just... it's just the bot lane mentality that I got. Morgana, I always rush Zhonya's after I finish Frost Queen Claim. Sometimes I do Zhonya's before, especially if I'm having a very strong laning phase, or like a strong mid game, and I have a lot of assists, and I can just get a needlessly large rod. I like building that first. If I can't afford a needlessly large rod, I'll rush Frost Queen, and then I'll go into the other component of Zhonya's. I forgot it already. No, Seekers. Seekers Arm Guard. Yeah, that's it. So I'll always, start building components for that. And then if I need to, like, not finish Zonia's, I kind of feel uncomfortable with that, but sometimes I'll just, go into more defensive items before I try and go. But I always try and rush Zonia's first just because I find it to be a core item on Morgana, and it really helps in team fights. So, and sometimes I'll get Zonia's on Nami too. If you haven't noticed, the only champions I really talk about are like Braum and Leona and Nami and Morgana, because those are the main champions I play for the team in our team comps. So yeah, but if you ever want to know anything else about why I play or what I do, you can put comments below, ask questions, everything like that. I like talking about it, like thinking about it, and I also like hearing other ideas. I know Gage likes to critique me all the time on my builds. I've been working a lot and focusing a lot on, my decision making in games and things like that. So any words of advice, any ideas, any questions, any comments, you can put it below. I check it out. I constantly check this page, so just in hopes that we get more viewers. But so that's just a little bit into the inside of what Egg does as support. I hope it was somewhat interesting hearing me blab about, my thought process and everything. And I'm pretty sure Gage is going to watch this video and it's going to be like, Egg, what the fuck is wrong with you? I don't think I can swear on YouTube. Egg, what the crap is wrong with you? And then I'm just going to be like, whoops, sorry. And then he's probably going to take it down. So hopefully this stays up though. Alright, peace.